Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote features a healthy dose of thought-provoking insights and information for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and nonprofit professionals. Each day since March of 2020, this program has offered that one thing to help you continue on your own unique pathway to success. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Hey, Tom. Good morning. Happy Tuesday.
Good morning, Bob. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. I got some real weird reverb from you all of a sudden.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, now it's gone.
I don't know.
Okay.
I have no explanation for that.
That's what happens when we start early. You know, the technology's not fully spun up yet.
Is that the way it works?
That's the way it works.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone to our early edition of today's Antidote. We are up and going. If you're watching this live, it's an hour earlier than usual. If you are watching this on replay, it doesn't really matter. Just whenever it shows up, it shows up. And you watch it. Use when you watch it. Or listening to the podcast. It doesn't really matter. So maybe sharing all that information wasn't really necessary. So anyhow, welcome to
I thoroughly enjoyed it, though.
Yeah, as I talked in circles. It was always fun. So welcome to today's Antidote, our daily broadcast and podcast, where we have a conversation around a topic. This week's topic is, if you didn't listen to yesterday's, you might not be exactly sure what's going on, and you'll figure it out. It's ready, set. The 2/3 of the sort of how we get prepared to take some sort of action or launch something. And so we will have that conversation in just a few minutes. But for now, we hope that...
Excuse me.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I've got something. I ate some oatmeal and I've got something in my throat and it just doesn't want to go away.
Of course, that oatmeal. That's your regular breakfast.
That's it.
Maybe that was the thing, is you didn't have a chance to fully get up and digest and prepare. And
yes, that's...
everything's just a little bit rushed.
I rushed. Yes, I rushed. Yeah.
Anyhow, so as we go along with our conversation, if you have comments that you'd like to share, please feel free to share them in the chat, because we know that not only benefits our show, but it also adds to what others are considering as they listen to what we talk about, and they consider what's real for them. If you are listening,
also another part of it that I think I realized yesterday when you were running the workshop we did, the I Wish to Success the Renegade Way workshop. And that was that when you write it out, it goes out of your head and into the world. And so I found yesterday, as I was doing the workshop, because I was participating, putting the comments in the chat made it real. Sure. And I got feedback from one of the people later in the day about what I had said. And they had an idea for me based on what they read. So, a lot of people are on here because they want to network. One way to network is to comment on this program and see other people who comment and go, oh, wow, you listen too, you watch too. That's really great. What did you think about? So Absolutely. There's another corollary there that I don't think we always bring up, but it strikes me today.
Yes. Well, I think there's a lot to be said about getting things out of your head and out into the world, whether that's saying that, writing it, sharing it in a post, sharing it on social media, that it obviously has impact on others. And as we talked about somewhere yesterday, in all of our interactions yesterday, that we never know how many people it's going to impact. And the value of putting it out there is well worth it. So please feel free to share your comments. And at the end, Bob and I will each share our one thing, our antidote for today, that you might use today, but you might not use until later. Sometime down the road when you need it, you might look back and say, wait a minute, those two guys were talking about this thing. And actually, that's really helpful as it relates to the situation that I'm in. So if you have that one thing, please feel free to share it in the chat as well. If you happen to be listening to the podcast and you can't put it in the chat, please feel free to go to our Ring of Renegades Facebook group, where you can share your thoughts there. It's a private community. You just have to ask to join, and you can become a part of our growing group of renegades.
It's early.
My mouth hasn't woke up yet. I think that's part of the and either that or my mind, one of the two. And
for me, they're one and the same.
yeah, probably is true as well. So you can share it there, where we are trying to help each other take our next step along our own unique pathway to success. So, all right, enough of that intro lead-in stuff where I seem to be all over the place. So what we start every show with is our celebrations. And Bob, what are you celebrating today?
I'm going to celebrate the fact that you and I have figured out a way to help people figure out their next steps. And I saw it in the workshop yesterday that you and I put together. You had done it last week. You did it yesterday for some people. I'll do it tomorrow for a group of people. And it's amazing to me how seamless and comforting that process is. And I'm incredibly amazed that we were able to distill it quickly and get it out there, and that it's helping so many people.
You could argue that it wasn't quick, that it's taken, what have we done? You said earlier before we launched the show, 480 episodes. Whew. So I quickly, I don't know, maybe. We have.
What I meant was when we started with the concept.
Sure.
To implementation, it was like every now and then you hear a recording artist and they're like, oh, tell us about how you wrote your song. And they're like, well, I got up, I took a shower, I came out of the shower and I sat down. The whole thing was written in like 23 seconds. Like, that's not possible. But it is. And for us, I think it was one of those things. When you get clarity, it's easier. So what are you celebrating?
So I am celebrating, I was going to celebrate that as well, which I will. I think I've shared on the show before that I like presenting, facilitating, just getting a chance to share thoughts and ideas, share what's real for me with others. And when people pick up on it, it's fun to watch that happen. It's fun to see people's reactions as they're like, oh, interesting. And even if they don't say anything. And I think as much as I enjoy that, something I shared yesterday that I thought was of real value to me was that we don't always know, and we may never know how many people we are impacting when we share what's real for us. And that the whole idea, I think that I said to yesterday, is likely if one person comes back and shares some feedback about the value you've provided them, there's probably 10 or 20 others who also had it. They just didn't either realize that it was you, remember that it was you, or feel the need to take the time to reach back out and say, hey, you know what? I was just going along today and this happened. And I remember when you said this or did this or shared this. And I realized it had much more of an impact on me than I thought. And so I think that it was just a reminder that we need to continue to share what's real for us, because there are people out there who will be impacted and we will never know exactly how many. And yet that's not necessarily the point. Yeah. Is it gratifying to know that someone comes back? What if we just said, hey, you know what? I believe that every time I share something, someone is being impacted.
Right.
Maybe in a big way, and sometimes not in a big way. So that's my celebration. So
I taught many college classes with that attitude. I know I'm affecting someone, even if it was to get them up for an 8 a.m. class, that was affecting them.
Well, and I think that's the thing. It goes back to results, right? Is that you taught that class, and for some they were like, wow, this was amazing. For others, they were like, interesting, but I don't know that applies. Others were back in the back of the room, kind of half paying attention.
Right.
Not ever in your class, but in
no, you couldn't hide in my class.
Yeah, right. And I'm sure there were a lot who figured that out. Anyhow, even for those people, at some point they were probably like, well, wait a minute. I heard that once before. They might not remember that it was you. They might not remember that it was that class. And yet it's still, you had an impact on them. So I think that's, for me, a good reason to celebrate. And so that was.
You ready for our national celebration?
Yes. What is our national celebration?
It's card playing day.
Card playing day.
Now you like to play cards, right?
Yeah. I love to
I
play
can't
cards.
remember where you and I went to a networking event one night 4 or 5 years ago, I think, and they had card playing, and you were into it, like
Card playing.
like I think it was one of those. Yeah, it was otherwise it was unmemorable. But I remember you were like, "Oh, let's go play cards." I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." I'm not a fan of playing cards. I like the social aspects, but I do not like poker. I don't understand Texas draw. What's
Texas
the one?
Hold'em?
What's
Texas
it?
Hold'em.
Yeah, that's it. No idea. Not a clue. I played euchre once or twice.
Awesome game.
I played gin and gin rummy and fish, with little kids, but just not my thing.
Yeah, I think for me I enjoy the challenge that it is. I enjoy the competition, and I enjoy the social interaction. Even if there's not a lot, even like, you go to a casino and you're playing Texas Hold'em, it's not like, hey, I'm with my friends and we're just having a good time. Like I used to play euchre with my friends in high school, college. It is watching people, and maybe that's it. So I think this opportunities for us to interact. And we do it in work, and I get a chance to do it in work a lot, and I think that's why I like it so much.
You mean interact with people, not play cards?
Correct. Interact.
Okay, just want to be clear.
Well, you never know.
It's early, and someone could be listening to this and going, "Wow, so Tom plays cards all day. Interesting."
Yeah, no. And I think that that's why I like things like golf, cards. When you get people together, I enjoy movies, but it's kind of like you're by yourself.
Yes.
Unless you go to a theater but it's dark, so you can't really watch how people interact. And I think it's that interaction that is really interesting, intriguing for me. And so I think cards fall into that. And I think it's just a good way to socially interact and also watch how people interact. It's funny. I've tried really hard this holiday, and I think I shared that yesterday, not to be on my phone, not to watch TV unless others were. And so typically we would have played cards at some point. And we ended up playing more board games. And I think that was...
Well, maybe tonight can be card night to celebrate.
Yeah, I don't know that. Well, maybe that will be. I don't know. We'll see. Although I signed up for this thing with one of my all-time favorites, Bob Berg, is doing some coffee hour or something at 7. So I might have to watch that, listen to that, whatever. Right. So card day. I like that.
Yeah. So we've been talking about ready and set, and today we're talking about planning. Would you like to jump off the diving board and explain it to us today, Tom?
Well, I think it was interesting as you were talking about our workshop that we did, and there are still spaces and dates left for those workshops, and more will be added. So
I'm supposed to have that link ready, aren't I?
Well, that's okay. We'll have it ready.
No, I'll get it right now. I got it. I got it on speed dial.
You were talking about putting that workshop together and the concepts around it, and
yes,
how it came together quickly. And I started thinking about that, and I'm like, it kind of came together quickly in the end. And at the same time, there was a lot of behind the scenes preparation for that. And some of that preparation was, we didn't even realize that it was leading to a workshop. We were talking about wishes on this broadcast. And I think I wrote a LinkedIn post about, that wishes are just things that stick in our head and usually get us stuck. And as I think I wrote about that, it was more about like, how do you take action, which is what we talk about all the time. And we've been talking about since we started this show, is how do you take the next step or the first step? And so often it's the step, which we'll talk about next week, that gets noticed. And so often we forget about all of the preparation. And I really think that while the final product came together for that workshop quickly, I believe that workshop was in the making since day one of this show. And that wasn't the intent, wasn't the results that we necessarily were expecting.
It's not on our board.
It's not well, it's not, and it is, right? It's not in that framework.
No, it's not.
And yet, if you think about it, we've always talked about how do you take the next step, right?
Right.
Today's antidote was about how do we get through the day during a pandemic, is sort of when it started, and through all the challenges that we face so that we're not overwhelmed, frustrated, and stuck, and we're able to move forward. So we went from how are we going to move forward from this pandemic to how do we look at the challenges that we face every day to take our next step, to how do we get out of one of the reasons we're challenged or we're stuck is because we wish and don't take action. And so I think that's a part of a lot of things, is that planning piece is sometimes intentional and other times not intentional. You know, one of the things about this ready, set, I don't know, every time I think about it, all I can imagine is a runner. And I shared that yesterday, especially a sprinter, who get prepared differently. You know, if you watch the Olympics or watch any race, sprinters have the starting blocks. You know, they usually have like this long drawn out process to prepare them or to plan. You know, you can usually see them, they're standing over their blocks, looking down their lane, focused on, all right, what am I going to do? Especially with like high hurdlers. Those people always amaze me.
Yes.
Right. They're actually going through like, okay, 3 steps, jump, 3 steps, jump, 3 steps, jump. And so that's really their planning process. And yet I don't think that, and while that is very intentional in the moment, think of all the preparation, the planning that has been done before this to get them to this point. And at some point, way, way, way back when, they were like, you know, maybe they were playing a game and they were being chased, and they're like, wow, interesting. I'm kind of fast. Maybe I should do something with this, or maybe there's something that will come out of this. And without even having an inkling that they could be a high school runner, a college runner, maybe even an Olympian. It just is like something that happens. And I think there's so much of that planning that either we, you know, or there are the people who said, I want to be a runner. All right, what do I need to do a runner? I need to do all this. I need to plan to figure out how I get there. And so I just think that piece of it is so important to whatever we're going to do, and realizing that sometimes some of that is intentional and other times it is just initial results that change over time.
Well, what interests me about what you're saying is in running, in sports, you can plan and prepare. It's, you know, you train. There's training.
Yep.
Baseball players have spring training. They go and they start building up the ability to make their bodies be able to play 162 games. I don't see that in business, and I don't see that in team leadership. I don't ever remember being hired into a job or someone being hired into a job and someone saying, hey, you know what? First 6 months, just train and figure it out. I think that's what happens, but we're hypercritical in a way that when I was training to run a half marathon, it was 6 months of training. First 3-4 weeks, I couldn't run 3 miles.
Sure.
How the heck was I going to run 13.1 if I couldn't run 3? But over time, you build it up. And I think in business, maybe there's a need to be more sympathetic and more aware of the fact that there is a training that has to go. There is a planning to get to a destination. You can't, I'm sure you've been in the experience where someone comes into a new job and they make changes the first week. And they're really rough changes.
Yes.
Because they have their vision for how it's going to be that doesn't incorporate what's already there. And
sure.
I made that mistake once, and it was really difficult to recover from. The next time I was in a leadership role, I came in and I'm like, 90 days. I'm waiting 90 days. I'm not doing anything for 90 days. I'll write every list in the world, gather all the information. And at the 90-day point, about 80% of what I'd written, I threw in the trash can. It's like, that won't work. That won't work. They already tried that 2 years ago. This is what the staffing won't support this. Even though it's what I thought was right, it wasn't right in that situation. And I think that's the part of this. When an athlete performs well, we say, wow, he ran a great race. I think you're right. I think it's the preparation, the ready set part that gets them to that point that they can execute really well.
Sure. Well, and that's the thing, is so often we put people in a role and we don't give them that opportunity. The planning a way to help them, what I think we'll talk about tomorrow, prepare for that role. You're thrust into it. And I think there's a balance. I've seen other organizations be like, well, why don't you take a year and figure it out? Go through a cycle. And I think that is there value to that? Absolutely. And at some point too, if you do too much of this planning and preparation and never actually launch, it's can be as detrimental as coming in and just changing things without ever understanding what the situation is. And I think that, it's fun. It's interesting, as you were talking about that, I was thinking about nonprofit boards. And there's, and it's the same with new jobs, is onboarding. It's like, how do we get people up to speed with our culture, our organization, our people, expectations, all of those things that as a new leader, someone in a new role needs to understand, as you discussed. And sometimes it takes 90 days and sometimes it doesn't. And I think that that's part of the challenge, is that so often, in business, I think we think about these 30, 60, 90-day plans or reviews. And it's really not, rather than it being a chance to onboard someone, to help them plan to really launch in this role, it's more about evaluations.
Yes.
Like, are they going to fit in? Did we make the right decision? We're making judgments on results that have very little feedback or input. You're saying, okay, in 90 days, you're going to be able to figure it all out. And then we're going to sit down and we're going to have a discussion about, a lot of times it's like, is it the right fit? So all of these and there's value to that. I don't just disregard that. And I think, all the many jobs have like, okay, there's 90 days. You could be fired within 90 days or let go without any cause.
Right.
And obviously in Maryland, it's different. We won't get into that because Maryland's an at-will. That doesn't matter. I think that those things are, just think we look at them. If we looked at them differently and looked at them as a way to, how do we help this person plan to be successful? And in this role, because it doesn't matter what they've done before, this role is different. And what is real in this role is going to be different than any other role.
Even if it's the exact same title in a very similar company, it's different. Different people, different operations, different processes. Yep.
Absolutely. And I think that, so that doesn't necessarily mean that one's experience somewhere else is necessarily going to allow them to come in and have the same results as they did in their last role. And I think that the more we can do to set people up for success, and whether that's someone else, if we're the leader or the owner, or it's ourselves, you think about, you launch a new business and everyone expects doing it themselves the way that they think they should do it. They're going to see great results in some timeline, some arbitrary timeline that they set up, that they'll be like, well, okay. Usually it's because that's how much money they have, or that's how much capacity they have for things to go well or not go well. And I don't know that we really take the time to look at all the things that go into it. It's not just go get, register your business, get a bank account, that's like a tiny piece of the planning that goes into being ready to launch something.
One, I think when we talk about businesses, it's also helping your customers be successful, onboarding your customers. A really simple question that I ask every new client now is, how do you want to be contacted? Email, phone, text, because it varies.
Sure.
And some people want to be on Zoom, and some people want to be on Google Hangouts, and some people want to do phone. And those things matter, because if the person never checks their email and I'm sending them emails and I don't know that they're not getting through, that's not helping that relationship. That to me is the planning process in terms of getting it ready for the great opportunities that sets the stage for. And I don't know that we do enough of that to help our customers be successful with us. Even, if I'm in the grocery store and they've got a new checkout system and you do your own barcode, where's the person who's going to help me understand how to do it the first time?
Sure.
Where is that? Hey, we want you to be successful here, because if you're successful at our grocery store today, you're going to come back next week and the week after, and you're not going to look for another grocery store. And I think we're not aware as leaders, as business owners, of how often we turn off our customers, not with our product or service, but with how we bring them into it. And it's like, figure it out. You had that, a year and a half ago, where you worked with a company and they left the keys to your vehicle somewhere on the dashboard, and 9 days later you found them?
Yes.
That's not good. That's not helping you be successful. That's not helping them be successful.
Sure. Well, and I think it goes in lots of different industries. I mean, I just think about, and sometimes it's hard to do, especially if you have a lot of customers or clients, how do you, one, make it easy for everyone? And two, how do you share with them the changes that are coming? Our Wegmans, the local grocery store that we go to all the time, about 3 or 4 months ago, shifted everything around. So like where things always were, they weren't there anymore. And I'm sure they did it should they have all their good reasons for it. And they were really good. It seems like the first probably 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month, of having people seemed like more staff. They're like, well, what are you looking for? Let me help you find that, which is great in that month. Doesn't help. I
haven't been in the Wegmans in 3 months, so if it's been completely altered, it's going to drive me nuts.
Yeah, it's a challenge, and I think that's that's part of their planning. Is if we're going to do this, how are we going to help people figure this out? This is something new and different. It's a change. Even if it was we're opening the store for the first time, how are we going to help people come in and know like where things are supposed to be? What's the flow? I know that we used to have our list, and I would know, okay, based on my list, I'm going to go this way.
Yep.
Now I find myself backtracking, and
that drives me crazy.
Yeah, and it takes longer, right? And so for me, I have to think differently about my trips there, rather than I know exactly where these 5 things are. I can go in and get them in 2 minutes, and with self-checkout be out of there in 10. Not
Great example. So what's your one thing today, Tom, as we talk about ready, set, and planning for it?
I think my one thing is that the planning time might be longer than we think. And I guess maybe even more importantly for this is you never know when you truly start planning. And you get some results, and while they, again, might not be what you expected, it can change over time, and you start to find through all of that sort of planning where you're going, and that what you thought were launches is all just maybe part of the planning process to getting to where you truly want to be. And I think if maybe we start to look at more of our actions in that way, as this is all helping us plan for something different, that we're more willing to spend more time planning and to allow people to start to figure things out in a different way.
I like that. And it gets to a comment that someone gave us during the workshop yesterday, that doing the process we illustrated yesterday took the blame out of not achieving things.
Sure.
And I think when we talk about planning, when we're planning, like when I was planning to run a half marathon, if I had a bad day of training, I'd be upset about it, but I wasn't like, well, I can't do it. I can't do it. It would just be, all right, come back tomorrow or the next day.
Right.
And
it could have been that way.
Correct. And I think in business, we are much more fatalistic. One bad thing happens and I don't know what I'm doing. And I think so often we see, I know for me, I get stuck with that one thing I can't figure out. And all the other things I've figured out, all the other things that I'm experiencing go away. And all I fixate on is that one thing that I don't have the resources to solve on my own. And so it's like training. And, when I was running the half marathon, I messed up my leg. I tore my hamstring a little bit and had to get a trainer to help me through that. What did I do to cause the injury? How do I not do it again? That I couldn't have figured that out myself. There's
Sure.
no way. And we don't do that enough in business.
I would agree. Is that your one thing?
That is.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for being with us. I think it's a good point to wrap this up because we'll likely get more into preparation tomorrow, I would imagine, I think. So we hope that if you have one thing you'd like to share, your antidote for today, that you will either put it in the comments or you'll share it inside the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. If you're not yet a member, I think I shared this. It's easy to join. Just go to Facebook, search for Ring of Renegades, and ask to join our group. If you are listening to the podcast, or if you're listening to a broadcast, watching a broadcast, please share it with others. Again, this might be the value that you put out in the world today that someone is going to thank you for at some other point because you were willing to share something that ended up having significant value for them. So we would encourage you to do that. And while you're doing that, if you want to rate our podcast, that would be great.
5 stars.
And because we would appreciate that. So we look forward to hopefully seeing you inside the Ring of Renegades Facebook.
It'll be early tomorrow again.
We will be early tomorrow again. Phew, man, 7:00. Oof. Anyhow, and we still have a few spaces left in our January 4th workshop. Bob put the link in there, so you can click on there and register. And we will be offering more of those, I believe. So,
yep.
And we hope you will be with us on the 4th. So we will look forward to seeing you inside the Ring of Renegades Facebook group, or we'll see you tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Eastern time for our next edition of today's Antidote. Have a great day, everyone.
Hey, embrace the renegading you.
And go play some cards?
No.
No?
No, you can, but I won't. I might play solitaire.
Okay.
I'm not even sure I have a deck of cards, to tell you the truth.
I'll keep that in mind for next holiday. All right. Take care, everyone. Thanks for listening to today's Antidote, powered by the Renegade Success Network. The Renegade Success Network helps you confidently create your own unique pathway to success. To learn more about the Renegade Success Network and how you can take your next step, follow us on Twitter, connect on LinkedIn, or join the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. For full details on how you can join our community, go to renegadesuccessnetwork.com. Embrace the renegade in you.